Yay! Ha ha! Let's go! Let's go! Waha! Just what I needed! Yay! Waha! 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 Yay! Just what I needed! Gotcha! Yay! Yay! Yeah! Ha! Yay! 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 Just what I needed! Yay! Happy Luigi. Ow! Yeah! Ha! Yay! Ow! Just what I needed. Yeah! Ha! Yeah! Ha! Yay! Yeah! Ha! Yay! 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 Gotcha! Yay! Yay! Gotcha! Ow! Yay! Yay! Gotcha! Waha! Ow! Ow! Yeah! Waha! Yeah! Ha! Yeah! Ha! Lucky Luigi! Yay! 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 Gotcha! Yeah! Ha! Yay! Yay! Yeah! Ha! Yeah! Ha! Yay! Waha! Waha! Lucky Luigi! Waha! 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 Lucky Luigi! Waha! 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 Yeah! Yay! Yeah! Oh, mamma mia! Let's go! Yeah! Ha! Gotcha! Hey! Yeah! Ha! Yeah! Ha! Yay! Oh, mamma mia! Let's go! Yeah! Ha! Just what I needed! Yeah! Ha! Yeah! Ha! Just what I needed! Yay! Waha! Waha! Let's go!